نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد, I'm very unconventional. The jacket's here and the phone is here. Very good. I like it that way. I'm not a good speaker. Okay. So I was saying, I'm not a good lecturer. If you try to attend a lecture of mine, you'll probably get bored and leave. But I am a historian of religion. So the word history has the word story in it. So I'm a good storyteller. And I'm going to say the same story tomorrow, by the way, inshallah. What's interesting, and I was discussing this earlier today, is what I call motivation. Why did you do what you did? One of the most interesting things in the world right now is the why factor. W-H-Y. Or in text message language, why. And the why factor is interesting because we don't know why we're doing anything. Or sometimes we're doing it for whatever reason that motivates us to do it. For example, ask yourself a question. Why did you come to pray Maghrib? Why did you? And don't make it superficial, because superficial doesn't work. If you have pain in your arm or pain in your back, and you go to massage sports therapy and it does a superficial massage, it's not going to work. True, deep tissue sports massage is where the person gets into your skin, gets into your bone. And then you come out good, right? So if your reasons for doing things are very superficial, it's not going to give you any benefit at all. You're gonna do things, you're gonna live your life, and you're just gonna be like everyone else. I pray because I have to pray, and I read Qur'an because I have to read Qur'an, and I sit in the masjid because I have to sit in the masjid, and I do this because of that, and whatever your reasons are, but they're very, very superficial. The second, if you want to know when your reasons are not superficial, is when you're put to a test. When you're put to a test. For example, nowadays, I say that one of the biggest problems in the world is seeking knowledge. Astaghfirullah, seeking knowledge is amazing. It's like far than everything. And I have my reasons. I say one of the biggest problems in the world is seeking knowledge, and at the same time, one of the biggest problems in the world is not seeking knowledge. So there's two ways to that. Automatically, you know that my brain is being a philosopher right now. Because I've taken the same thing and I made that a problem and made that a solution as well. But when you're forced into a situation, what you want at that specific time, think about it. When you're forced into a situation, what you want at that specific time is the true motivation for why you want that specific thing. For example, I'm driving, I used to live in the Southwest, in Arizona. And when my gas tank, the little thing, it reaches, quarter tank, I tell myself, I can still drive for another 100 miles. Right? That's normally what happens, right? We keep driving. No one fills it up after, you wait till it comes to the E. And when it reaches the E, you still, I can go for another 50 miles. Needless to say that, and I don't know, maybe it's my own understanding, but when the little needle reaches quarter, I think it's because of gravity, because that it goes down faster. When it's up, it goes slowly. I drove from Boston to Hartford, I filled it up in Boston, and when I reached Hartford, it was still at full. But then I drove from Boston to Hartford, went on the quarter, and it reached the E. Gravity, I don't even know, something's weird. It just like you're burning gas when you reach lower. So, mechanics, don't judge me. But when I talk about when you need something, when it's that quarter tank in Arizona, there's a lot of highways, and a lot of these highways, it's exactly how you would picture it, just a straight road with the sand on the sides and cactuses in the middle of nowhere. That's how it is, on just one road going nowhere. And then you basically see a sign on the highway. It says fuel, 2 miles. Underneath it says next services 110 miles. Yeah? Next 110 miles. Now you do the calculation in my head. I'm like, that took me, I was able to get however many miles. It's a quarter tank. I think I can make it to the next services. I don't realize that gravity pulls the needle further down, and I start to panic because I only drive about 20, 30 miles, and it's almost at E. And I'm like, oh, look, I can't turn back around. So now I keep on driving, and I start making dua. At that time, I read Yasin like 4 times. So Yasin kept my car going for a few miles. I'm talking about a neat situation where you need something, and I'm just driving and driving and driving. What's interesting, the highways are not that boring there. They're really, because the highway itself, if it was nothing around, it would be boring, but they do something really cool. They should do this on these highways here. But yeah, that's coming up every now and then. They write stories for you. What does that mean, they write stories for you? Yeah, you're driving at the 1 mile mark, you're going to see once upon a time. And as you're driving, that's why you see a billboard of once upon a time. As you're driving, you think to yourself, well, at the 2nd mile mark, the story continues. There was an elk. Oh, okay. 3 mile mark, and it continues until you reach the 100-mile mark. The story finishes. Apparently, the story was talking about someone who was driving, and there was an elk, and he drove his car into the elk, and before they can recover the elk, they discovered that there's no way, so then they cut the elk and they killed it, and they had barbecue and whatever. That was what the story was. It was interesting, but as I'm driving, it's suspicious. Every billboard was, what was it doing? It was building up on the suspense. It was so cool. I was like, wow, there's an elk biryani. Imagine put that way. So I'm smelling it on my way to the car. So anyways, now I'm reaching the 50-mile mark and I'm praying, Ya Allah, gas, I need gas. Ya Allah, oh my God, I need gas. The heart, it really wants tawheed. One thing that your heart really wants is the oneness of tawheed, the oneness of Allah. And that's why when you're in this craziest situation, the first thing your heart does is turn to Allah. You can just turn to anyone else, but the heart says, no, sorry, buddy, Allah. So you start going towards Allah. He's like, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. And I'm praying because I know that there's no cell phone reception here because it's all cactus. There's no cell phone reception. And the next is what, I lost count of how many miles that there are. I don't even know. And I'm just driving. And it's Maghrib time has come in. And at this point, praying Maghrib is a different story. But I just don't want to turn the car off because I'm afraid it's not going to turn on. Once the car is already on, fine, let it go, right? It's okay. If it shuts off when it's done, then anyway, so I'm driving, and it's getting darker and darker, and I think to myself, I'm a traveler, it's okay. I'll pray Maghrib, when I reach my destination. Even though I'm Hanafi, I'm supposed to pray at this time, but it's okay, don't worry, this might not be Shafi'i, it's fine. So I'm driving, doing a whole fiqh equation in my head, and I'm driving, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. It's dark now, no one can see me. If I were to pull over on the side of the road and my gas went on, and I start waving at someone driving by, they're going to think I'm crazy. Right or wrong? When you're driving on an empty road, you pull over to the side, and you're like waving at someone to help you. What are they going to say? What's wrong with this guy? In the middle of the desert? What was wrong with you? And all of a sudden, and I'm praying this, I'm in need of like, I don't even know. It's been on E for the last half an hour. It's below E. It's below E. And then After all of a sudden, poof, X on. I said, thank you. I almost, kind of thanking Allah, I almost got the exit also. Anyway, so pulled off, and I filled up the gas, $40, put it into the tank. Gas was cheap now, but that time it was expensive. $40 put it into the tank, and I gave the guy $50. And I said, keep the change. He's like, what happened? I'm like, you're a life, so you don't even know. I don't even know if you're real, but because this is not 110 miles for sure. This is 60-mile mark or something. There's another gas station coming up later on. But keep the change. See, but you see what happened there? That yearning, that where I was calling to Allah, that wasn't superficial. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't superficial. I was really calling to Allah. But my faith at that time was so strong, you understand? It was very, very strong. But let me give you another example. You see, there was a really, really famous philosopher. I don't like to say philosopher stories, but it's fine. His name was Socrates. Have you heard of him? And he was walking with a student. The student came up to him, like a lot of people come up to me, and a lot of people come to this and say, we want to study with you. He said, okay, you want to study with me? Let's go for a walk. And he started walking. He's walking. I'm going to talk about superficial. He's walking. They're walking down, the beach. He says, so you want to study with me? Okay. Just walking. He says, you know what? Let's just walk towards the water. They start walking towards the water. He says, tell me about your studies. What do you want to do? They're having a conversation, and the teacher's listening, student is walking, and they start walking towards the water. As they're walking towards the water, they get more and more into the water until the water reaches their knee. And the students look at the teacher, and the teacher keeps on going. And the students are like, seriously? And they keep on walking. They're walking until the water reaches their waist. And they keep walking. At this point, the student is really freaking out. They keep on going forward. They keep on walking until the water reaches their. It's really dangerous. I don't even know about the sharks, but they reach that far. And then all of a sudden, the teacher looks and says, you really want to seek knowledge? He grabs him and puts his head under the water. And then keeps it there. That's still a long time. And he lifts it up. He said, what do you want? What do you need? He asked, what do you need? What do you need right now? I need air. Puts it back down. He does it a few times. And then lifts him back up. This guy's like almost about to, like really he's choking. He takes him back. He goes, when I put your head under the water, what was the thing that you needed the most? He says, I needed air. He goes, when your zeal for seeking knowledge is the way you wanted that air, then you come and you talk. Until then, don't even bother. That's what I call deep depth. You understand? And this depth does not come in when you superficially learn things that you want to learn. You have to want to pray that same, depth of wanting to be. You should know why you're doing what you're doing, but it should not be superficial at all. And this is where the Qur'an comes into the picture. You see, now that we've understood what does it mean to be superficial, and we've understood what it means to be, have depth, and you've understood my story of filling up gas that had no relevance at all, but whatever, you understood it. And you've understood the story of the guy who almost killed a student in the water. Good. Now, let's go to the time of the Sahaba. You see, we have the Qur'an on our shelves. See your shelves? You guys know the shelves. When you have things in front of you, many times we end up taking them for granted. Many times we end up taking them for granted. And when you don't have it, many times we just tend to neglect it. There was the time when worshipping idols was very normal. When worshipping idols, was very normal. It was so normal that that's just what they did. That's just what they did. If you went into someone's house, there was idols there. Now, keep in mind that these mushrikeen who lived in Mecca, they worshipped Allah. They knew Allah, and they also worshipped Allah. Their names were Abdullah. Did you know that? These mushrikeen, their names are Abdullah. But what they were doing was they did not believe that themselves they can directly connect with God. So they started using idols that they would make themselves and would worship those idols in order to worship Allah. That's why in the Qur'an Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you were to ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they're going to say Allah did. They know Allah created it. But how can we directly connect with Allah? What do we need to do? We, worship these idols. So sometimes they would make idols made out of dates. Take a bunch of dates and put it together, make a nice idol. And you worship the idol all night. In the morning, your stomach starts to hurt because you're hungry and all you see is your idol there. So consume your idol. But it was the norm. It was the norm. So then one day, one individual comes into the picture and says, we're not going to worship idols anymore, we're going to directly worship Allah. So this person gets rejected. We know this person as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That one individual who we, as Muslims, we recognize as the final prophet, and we recognize as the seal of the prophets. So this individual comes out and he tells people not to worship the idols anymore. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. Because imagine what would happen if I came up to lead Maghrib Salah and I read up the whole Surah Al-Baqarah in the first rak'ah only. And then I read the whole Surah Al-Imran in the second rak'ah. At some point you're going to, it's not the norm. It's not the norm. I don't even know what I did today was probably the norm or not. Was it the norm? Okay, fine. So it was a norm. But normally in Maghrib you read short. I want you to understand my analogies and understand what I'm trying to say, my examples, because everything ties in together. So when you do something that's against the norm, people start to, look at you in a bad way. It's like you build a black cloud on your head. And you're like, you don't know what it is. And you think as if, something's really bothering you. So now it's against the norm, and I want you to picture yourself in the situation that what you need to do is go back into history, go back at that time, and imagine yourself. Imagine someone actually comes to the masjid right now, over here, and tells you to do something which is against the norm. What are you going to tell them? You're going to tell them, sorry, you just don't do it that way. Correct or incorrect? Against the norm. See, going against culture. It was a culture to worship the idol. Now this person, this man, is going against culture. And all this person has is 5 verses of the Qur'an. Now this individual, imagine the story. Someone comes up to you right now. There was a masjid in Toronto. I was praying Jummah there, and all of a sudden, right after Salah, someone stood up and said, I've been raising a Tyrannosaurus Rex in my backyard, and now this Rex is trying to, he said that, it's a dinosaur in my backyard. And this Tyrannosaurus Rex has all grown, and I raised it from when it was small. And now, imagine someone comes and tells you, what are you going to say? You're going to say something's wrong, right or wrong? But again, going against the norm. Maybe this person, there's a possibility that this person actually did raise a Tyrannosaurus Rex. How do you know? You didn't see it. You automatically say no. But imagine the situation Prophet Muhammad had to go through. You come into the picture and you say, you know what? I was sitting all alone inside of a cave, and all of a sudden this angel came to me and he squeezed me and said, read, and I just couldn't read. Imagine someone came and told you that. What are you going to say? Well, that's exactly what they told the Prophet. What, are you crazy? Think about it. That's exactly what they said. But his wife said no, and she believed him. So all he had with him now was these 5 verses of the Qur'an. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. The first wahi that came, the first revelation that came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were these verses of the Qur'an. Do we all agree upon them? Yeah. Yes, good. Because we read this, we know this. Now that we've all come to an agreement, we all understand. See, everything that I'm saying, you're all agreeing with me. What I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you what you already know, but I'm going to tell you in a way that you never thought about it ever. Because see, we take the story superficially. We take the story superficially. Go deep. Go deep. And the first depth that I'm talking about is when the Prophet came to the people and he told them the story. But his wife believed him right away. The people closest to him believed him right away. His cousin Ali radiallahu anhu believed him right away. His people closest to him believing him right away. And all of a sudden, there was a group of 3 or 4 Muslims. 3 or 4 people that believed in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Keep in mind, before the revelation, Prophet Muhammad did not know Iman. Oh my God, what a statement he's making. Right? Before the revelation, the Prophet did not know Iman. He did not know Kitab. I'm not making this up. In the Quran, Allah says, مَا كُنْتَ تَدْرِي مَا الْكِتَابُ وَلَا الْإِيمَانُ وَلَكِنْ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُورًا نَهْدِي بِهِ مَنْ نَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا وَإِنَّكَ لَتَهْدِي إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. You didn't know what was Iman and Kitab. The revelation taught it to you. So now that the revelation came in, people, all they had was this. Love for the Quran is the point we're going to understand now. How? Well, in the middle of this, imagine that Tyrannosaurus Rex person constantly was coming to the masjid. What would we say? The first time we react to this person is going to be a very bad reaction. They actually took him and forced him out of the masjid. And he's like, you don't believe what I'm trying to say. And they grabbed him and they literally dragged him out of the masjid. You guys understand? So imagine the treatment the Prophet ﷺ got. Think about it. I'm giving you the history. I'm telling you what happened. Understand it from our point of view. And then imagine what happens when someone else comes in and says, you know what? I believe in the Tyrannosaurus Rex story. You see what I'm saying? Not only that, 3 or 4 people start to believe, yeah, you know what? Your wife believes, but she really doesn't believe. She's saying that just because she's your wife. That's all. So now you have a group of 3 or 4 individuals believing in this. And now they know when they're going to go in public saying this, everyone is going to, they're going to shun them, they're going to make fun of them, they're going to do all kinds of stuff to them, yes or no? Because it's not the norm, you don't do this. So they started to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hiding inside someone's house. They were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hiding inside someone's house. You all following? They're hiding inside someone else. So now they're hiding in this person's house and they're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, what are they worshipping? They're not really praying because salah wasn't made fard at that time. Well, they're not really praying because how much Qur'an are you going to read in this prayer? You only have 5 verses of the Qur'an. Right or wrong? You read 5 verses. Imagine Imam Kita Qul every single. A lot of people do that in regular prayers, I know, but imagine the Imam did that every single salah. That's all he did. Even though fiqh-wise it's okay, but, So, this idea, there was no salah at that time. This is early days of Islam. So let's just say, for example, a small group comes in. Now there's a little bit of a rebellion starting because now you have one individual, he's got a group of 5 or 6 people now, and all he's telling them is, you know what, you don't worship the animals, you worship God directly. Oh, so that's a pretty good idea. So we don't care about what happened in the cave, we don't care who came and what happened, all that, we don't care about that, but we know that this person is calling to the one God. This seems to be really, really reasonable. The Christians and the Jews are like, yeah, oh my God, we believe in the same thing. The Jews story, that's another story that comes later on in Medina. We're not going to get to Medina today, maybe another day. But you start off with a group of people, and they're following this story, and then all of a sudden they realize Prophet Muhammad was a person who never lied. He was someone who told the truth. He was someone, there's no way that he could have made the story up. So they're going to believe it. We believe the story, yes or no? The Orientalists don't believe the story, but we believe the story because we know the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ. As-Sadiq wal-Amin, that's what he was known as. So we know that he was not going to lie, so all of a sudden this person doesn't lie. So you go and you start believing what this person is saying and believing, and now you are following it. You're becoming part of this little cult or this little rebellion that gets together inside the house of a person named Arqam. And you sit down, and all you have is 5 verses of the Quran as your manual for success or whatever. We have the whole Quran on these 4 shelves over here, maybe 5 shelves in the back, whatever. That's all they have, these 5 verses of the Quran, and that's all they have. 1 day goes by, 2 days go by. 3, 4, 5 days go by, 6 days. How many? 7 days go by. Now you're talking about an individual. More people are accepting this little rebellion. I'm calling it rebellion just so that you understand. I want you to understand in the context. And people are understanding this, and all of a sudden they like this idea that we pray to the one God and things are happening for us. We're actually at peace. We're actually at peace. But there are people who are really, really daring. So they go to their house and they try to talk to their parents and they say, you know what? We don't want to go through this whole, 5 or 7 parties to get married. Islam says you only need the nikah and you only need the hijab and the qabul to get married. So why do we need to go through all of these things? But then the parents, they smack you because they could smack you at that time. They pull out the whip and they start beating you. They say, how could you do that which our ancestors haven't done? But what if your whole family and ancestors, everything were wrong? So they want to try to convince them that, it's okay, your ancestors might be wrong. Don't worship these idols. You make the idols. You went to the guy. He made the idols for you, and you've seen where it came from, and now you're worshiping them. And the idol falls and it breaks. Oh my God, they're about to panic. Don't worry, I'll just glue it together. Here you go. You see, it doesn't benefit you. If you put food in front of the idol, and if the fly came and took a morsel of rice, your idol can't even get it. And that's why Ibrahim is genius, He breaks down both idols. They come and they ask him, that's the big idol. Apparently he can see and everything. So, they'll probably tell you who did everything. Doesn't make any sense. So that at that point in time, they start beating them because that's what they can do at that time. There wasn't police. So you beat them and you put a fire and take the fire out, but just because they were going against the norm. Just because they were going against the norm. But all they had was 5 verses of the Qur'an. And now people are getting annoyed. They're like, listen, two weeks ago, you had 5 verses of the Qur'an. 2 weeks later, you have 5 verses of the Qur'an. The story is deep. It's a lot more deep than you think. 1 year goes by, and all they have is 5 verses of the Qur'an. There was no revelation that came for the first 3 years. Did you know that, right? There was no revelation. But if you think about it superficially, as I said, the way you come to pray and this and that, it's a nice story. If you think about it in reality, it's actually a lot more harsh. 3 years go by, and the group of Muslims is growing. Eventually they started praying, and they started opening it up, but they only had 5 verses of the Qur'an. And then all of a sudden, another revelation comes on the Prophet. Now, I feel alone. I don't have any friends because everyone has shunned me. My family is no longer looking at me anymore. And my friends are not my friends anymore because I believe in the Tyrannosaurus Rex story. And everyone thinks I'm a little bit weird now. So these individuals are feeling really lonely. That cloud is on their head. They can't even go outside. They have to hide their faith. And they're being tortured when someone finds out that they believe. And as they go outside, I haven't even talked about memorization yet, have I? Well, let's get to that then. You want to get to that part? Okay. This person goes outside and he only has 5 verses of the Qur'an. The only thing this person has to rely on his faith is 5 verses of the Qur'an and belief that Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. So when someone asks them, I believe Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. And this individual sticks on to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam because the Prophet is a little bit older than them. He's 40, 45 years old at this point. Let's say 43 years old. Right? He's a little bit older. And these people are young. These people are younger because they're young. They can think and they can, critically analyze and they think about the situation. And all they know is our family has rejected us. Our friends are not there for us. Who's the only person there for us? This Prophet Muhammad, he's opening his hands and he's taking us in. Well, see, that's why and he was always like that. That's why when Zayd, radiallahu anhu, when his father came to take him, he told him, I'd rather be with the Prophet. Because he took them in, he loved them. He took them in and he loved them because they knew that they did not have anyone else. So you all have your families with you. So be happy about that. Don't, keep them close. But these people, they didn't have their families. When they went back to the family, they were beaten for what they were doing. So the only thing they had was Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who was a messenger. And what's the job of the messenger? To convey a message. And what was the message? 5 verses of the Qur'an. That's all there was. 5 verses of the Qur'an. 3 years have gone by, there's only 5 verses of the Qur'an. So now that this is established in our heads, all of a sudden a revelation comes to the Prophet. 3 years later, and the Prophet ﷺ calls Zayd. Or the Prophet ﷺ, Zayd was someone he was raising, but one of the companions that was sitting there, he finds out there's another verse of the Qur'an was revealed. And he tells them, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, this verse was revealed. Really, there's been another verse. We were stuck on 5 for the last 3 years. And people were hating on us. And now there's another verse. What is the verse? What is the verse? You see, what was their true friend? They didn't have anything with them. Their true friend was the Prophet ﷺ and these 5 verses. That's all they had. But the Prophet's mission was what? To convey the 5 verses. He's the messenger of Allah. He's going to convey the message of Allah. His job was to bring the Qur'an and give the Qur'an, correct or incorrect. That was his job. Messenger. A messenger's job is to take from one place, give to another. If a person makes any changes in the message, that's not the message from the originator anymore. It's a changed message. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He's the messenger. We're giving him the message, but we're going to make sure that we're going to protect him. So he got the message, he conveyed. He didn't make any changes at all. Nothing at all. He conveyed the message, took it, conveyed it. So the companions were waiting for this message because the Prophet told them, I'm just a messenger and receive this message. I'm just a human being just like you. I get the revelation. I'm going to convey this message. This revelation comes in. Every single person who's a Muslim, they start crying. We've been waiting for this day. We were stuck on these 5 verses. What is that revelation? And these verses come on. What's the first thing that they do? They memorize it. What's the first thing that they do? They memorize it. Why did they memorize it? Why? Because that's all they had. They had no friends. The Qur'an was their friend. So they memorized because that was that guidance. We're looking for guidance. That's our guidance. They memorized it. All of a sudden, revelation comes in. What was the revelation? They memorized it. And another revelation, they memorized it. And they kept on memorizing this revelation. They're sitting inside Arqam's house and one person runs in and says, there's a revelation. What was the revelation? And they sit down and he says, this was the revelation. Let's say, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they sit there and they're like, okay, can you repeat that again? And they memorize it right away. So people are writing it down to memorize it because that was what they had. And they memorized it and they kept it inside of their hearts. But there was another aspect of it. The Qur'an was revealed piecemeal. Piecemeal means in parts. Little by little. And because it was revealed little by little, it wasn't a book that was all revealed at one time. The verses of the Qur'an could have indicated to any situation that was taking place at that time. So for example, at one point in time, someone was backbiting. Someone was backbiting and talking bad about someone behind their back, and all of a sudden the verse of the Qur'an is revealed, don't backbite. Imagine how that person who was backbiting was feeling. Imagine, just think about it. Imagine you believe and you know the Qur'an, you're backbiting and a verse of the Qur'an is revealed right the next day about backbiting. For sure you're going to be like, this verse is revealed about me. Yes or no? Because you know what's coming in that situation. So they memorized it because that's all they had. And from this goes on, idea of memorizing the Qur'an. And as they memorized it, as I said, it was very, very deep. And they brought the whole Qur'an into their hearts, all because they loved it. And as they move forward into the world, eventually the memorization of the Qur'an itself became individual sciences. It became individual sciences where people were started working on the Qur'an and started focusing their attention for the Qur'an, started focusing their attention on writing the Qur'an and reading the Qur'an, because before Arabic language, the writing of Arabic was really, really ugly. Arabic writing was very, very ugly. You should if you do a little bit of research, go look at old Arabic writing, very ugly. But Arabic writing codified itself and became really, really beautiful as the Qur'an was being revealed, because people started writing it as well. And that's the message of memorization that I want to get to right now. That when it comes towards understanding Islam and understanding what it is that we want to do and that we wish to achieve in our life, the first lesson is ask yourself the question why. And the second lesson is, once you've understood why you're doing that specific thing, make sure that reason is deep. It's not superficial. And if you want to understand that reason and the depth of that reason, go back into history and see why the first people actually did it. Why did the Sahaba memorize the Qur'an? Why did the Sahaba memorize the Qur'an? And once you get that motivation, you are going to memorize the Qur'an. Why? Because you love it. Simple. That's the best motivation That the reason you memorize the Qur'an is because you love it. The reason I memorize the Qur'an because I love it. The reason why Abu Bakr bin Mujahid stood up and he told off the Arabic grammarians was because he loved the Qur'an. The reason why Ibn al-Jazari came and he stood firm against all opposition and he recited the Qur'an and codified the text is because he loved it. The reason why Tabari stood up and he wrote up a tafsir of the Qur'an as soon as paper became available because he loved it. The reason why the child right now is memorizing the Qur'an because he's forced. Ooh, such a paradox. There's a whole different situation that happened. Think about it. Different now, different then. If you go back to the old idea, then you'll start to realize that, you know what, you want to test your love? أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do you think that by saying that you believe in Allah, you're not going to be tested? Of course you'll be tested. These companions were tested in such a way that they were beat and they were hurt and they were tortured, but they still stood up and they said, this is the Quran because they see the truth. If we are going to understand and read and connect ourselves with the Quran because of its true depth or the true depth of our motivation, which is love, then there's no one that can come in your way and stop you. There's not a single person that can come in your way and stop you. Why? Because you're going to start to see from from the eyes which are a lot more deeper. Those eyes which are a lot more deeper than the superficial eyes that everyone else has. No one can stop you. They'll come in the middle. They'll tell you, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? You're going to tell them because I love the Quran. And I'll finish off with one thing that Imam Shāṭṭabī says. He says, فَحَبْلُ فِينَا كِتَابُ فَجَاهِدْ بِهِ حِبْلَ الْعِذَا مُتَحَبِّهِ. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold firm to the rope of Allah. Imam Shāṭṭabī, he says right in the beginning, he says, the rope of Allah is the book of Allah. The rope of Allah is the book of Allah. The source of all of the Sharia is the Quran and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first source of fiqh is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. The first thing that was codified in regards to the structure of Islam was the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Not because it was their homework, because they loved it. And that love is what caused them to preserve it to the Quran that we have right now, which is unchanged for 1500 years since the time it was revealed. Something that we cannot even challenge. And it can never ever be changed. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us the ability to understand the depth behind the Quran and the love for the Quran and what it means to have the true love for the Quran. Keep in mind one thing, that once you understand the story of the Quran that I just told you right now, from the perspective I told you, go back into history. Now when you're going to pick up the Quran and read it, you're going to see that this verse is revealed about this specific battle. But it's not a story anymore. It's a story for you. But when the Prophet ﷺ was reading the verses of the Battle of Badr, the Battle of Badr was happening at that time. When he was reading the verses of the martyrs, or when he was reading the verses of the Battle of Uhud, it was happening at that time, or it had just happened and he was burying the people in their graves. Look at it, understand the verses of the Quran in their context, and then when you sit down and read it, it would be only a shame if a tear did not come down your eyes. Because they lived that Quran. We read it. You want to live it? Understand it. JazākAllāh Khaiyr. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. If anyone has any questions, you can come and ask me directly. So I'm not going to open up the forum for questions because I just won't be. But if anyone has any questions, you can inshallah come and you can talk to me.